With Spurs currently flying high under Ange Postecoglou, the good times seem to be back in the white of North London. Similarities are being drawn to Pochettino's Spurs side, which at its peak was competing in a Champions League final. It therefore only makes sense to look back at Pochettino's Spurs to see how far they've come under him and if Postecoglou can have a similar impact. So in this video, we'll take a look at Pochettino's first ever Spurs 11 and where they are now. As always, please like, comment and subscribe before we get started. Goalkeeper Hugo Lloris. Lloris was signed from Lyon in 2012 and was the keeper in between the sticks in Poch's first ever Tottenham starting 11 versus West Ham on the 16th of August 2014. Over the years, he's been a good servant to the club and arguably one of the most important players for them in the last decade. Since joining, he's not won anything, but he did win the World Cup with France in 2018. Up until this season, Lloris was Tottenham's undisputed number one, but this season he's been replaced by Spurs' new goalkeeper, Vicario. Lloris has over 400 appearances for Spurs and now at 36 might be heading for retirement. Right back, Kyle Naughton. Spurs have a history of having right backs named Kyle, with Kyle Walker-Peters and Kyle Naughton all having played for the club in the last decade or so. Unfortunately, Naughton probably had the worst career of the three at Tottenham, as despite starting in Poch's first ever game at Spurs, he quickly fell out of favour. He was actually sent off in this game and was shipped out to Swansea just a few months later. And he's actually been at the club ever since, playing in the Championship since 2018, which is when Swansea got relegated. He's established himself as a decent Championship fullback, making over 150 appearances in the league. Now 34, Naughton signed a new one-year deal with Swansea earlier on in the summer. Centre-back, Younes Kaboul. A throwback centre-back, Kaboul was big, strong in the air and a leader, and therefore logically he was Pochettino's first ever captain, appointed in September 2014. At the time he was linked to moves to Besiktas and even rivals Arsenal, but giving him the captaincy solidified his stay at Spurs. But that would be short-lived, as just 2 months later he lost his captaincy to Lloris and dropped from the first team. He finished the season with only 11 league appearances and then joined Sunderland. His time up north was short-lived, as despite helping Sunderland avoid relegation in the 15/16 season, he left for Watford the following season. They signed him for £4 million, but Kaboul continued to struggle for fitness and form and left the club in December 2018, with his last appearance coming in September 2017. Upon his release, Kaboul announced his retirement from professional football. Centre-back, Eric Dyer. Along with Lloris, Eric Dyer is the only other player from Poch's first ever game at Spurs that is still at the club. He is almost due a testimonial at Spurs, but back then he was actually making his debut for the club. In fact, he scored the only goal in this game in added time and then established himself as a key player in North London. Throughout his time at Tottenham, he's played a variety of positions, but mostly centre-back and CDM. Since joining Spurs, he's also been capped 49 times for England, although he hasn't been picked since last year. Dyer, now 29, hasn't featured for Spurs so far this season, and it's evident that Postecoglou deems him surplus to requirements. His contract expires in the summer and he's been linked with a January move to Roma. Left back, Danny Rose. When Poch first came to Spurs, Danny Rose was one of the best left backs in the Premier League. He became an instant fan favourite when on his league debut for Spurs he scored a thunderous volley against bitter rivals Arsenal. Under Poch, Danny Rose made the PFA Team of the Year twice, consecutively in the 15/16 season and the 16/17 season. But once Poch left, his career went downhill, and that too at a rapid rate. He infamously had a falling out with Mourinho, who he accused of showing favouritism towards other players, and this was all aired on Tottenham's All or Nothing documentary with Amazon. He had a short loan spell at Newcastle but failed to impress, and then in June 2021 he joined Watford permanently. Again, he failed to impress and had his contract terminated at the end of the season, making only 9 appearances for the club. And Rose hasn't played professional football since, although he hasn't announced his retirement either. Central midfield, Christian Eriksen. One of the few players on this list who's gone on to have a good career post-Tottenham is Manchester United's Christian Eriksen. He was a key player for Poch during his time at Spurs, but by 2020 he wanted to move on and joined Inter Milan in the January transfer window. He struggled initially but did play his part in Inter Milan's first Scudetto in over a decade back in 2021. He then went to the 2021 Euros with Denmark, and we all know what happened by now. He collapsed on the pitch but thankfully made a recovery. Due to needing a defibrillator, he couldn't play in Italy anymore, so joined Brentford on a 6-month deal, and almost instantly he was back to his best. As a result, he earned himself a move to Manchester United on a free in the summer of 2022 and had a largely impressive season, winning the Carabao Cup and reaching the FA Cup final with the club. He is of course still at Manchester United, but has had his playing time reduced due to the signings of Mount and Amrabat. Central midfield, Ben Taleb. When Pochettino first came to Spurs, Ben Taleb was a fairly prominent member of the squad. He made 35 appearances in all competitions in Poch's first season, but clearly didn't impress as the following season he only managed 11. He was loaned out to Schalke ahead of the 16/17 season, where he impressed enough for them to sign him permanently. After 3 seasons he was loaned out to Newcastle, but again failed to impress in England after making just 12 league appearances all season. He returned to Schalke and made 9 appearances in their relegation campaign, but on the 6th of January 2022 he joined Angers. He stayed there for 18 months before signing for hometown club Lille this summer. Central midfield, Capoue. Capoue was one of the many duds signed using the Gareth Bale money, and Poch's first season at Spurs would end up being his second and last. However, he's gone on to have a decent career post-Spurs. He did 6 seasons at Watford in where he was a regular starter and reached the FA Cup final in the 18/19 season, where he also won Watford's Player of the Year award. In the January of 2021, after suffering relegation with Watford the previous season, he signed for Villarreal. He only cost €2 million and has been a real bargain. His man of the match performance in the 2021 Europa League final helped Villarreal win their first major trophy in the club's history. The following season he reached the Champions League semi-final with the club, making him a pivotal member of the most successful period in the club's history. Now 35, he continues to be a key member of the team. Right wing, Eric Lamela. Despite being a very talented player, due to injuries and inconsistencies, Lamela never quite filled the boots of his predecessor Gareth Bale. He lasted for 6 more seasons at Spurs after the arrival of Poch, though he did miss over a year of football in 2016 after a nasty hip injury which required 2 operations. In 2021 he won the Puskas Award following his superb Rabona goal in the North London derby back in March 2021, a game in which he was also sent off, which pretty much summarises his career at Spurs. That summer he joined Sevilla in a swap deal involving Brian Hill. He's been at the club since and last season won the Europa League, which was the first trophy of his career. Striker, Emmanuel Adebayor. How could we ever forget about footballing maverick Adebayor, a player who once ran the entire length of a pitch to celebrate a goal in front of the away fans of his former club. He only did 1 year under Poch at Spurs, scoring 2 goals in 13 league games. He then signed for Crystal Palace on a 6-month deal, managing only 1 goal and then moved to Istanbul Başakşehir. There he picked up some of his old form, scoring 15 league goals in his first season at the club. His second season, however, wasn't anywhere near as good as he only scored 3 league goals. He then joined Kayserispor in August 2019, but just 4 months and 8 league games later, he left. He then signed for Olimpia in Paraguay, whose club president promised they'd sign the striker if the club got 20,000 new season ticket holders. But due to the outbreak of the you-know-what, he left after just 2 league games. Adebayor then returned to his home country Togo and signed for a team called Samasi. In March 2023, he retired from football aged 39, with a career spanning over 20 years where he scored over 200 goals at club level. Left wing, Aaron Lennon. Tottenham fans will have fond memories of club hero Aaron Lennon. He was a key member of Harry Redknapp's Spurs, which included players like Gareth Bale, Van der Vaart and Modric. But by the time Poch arrived, he was past his best and had lost his blistering pace, which used to devastate fullbacks. He only lasted 6 months under Poch and then was loaned out to Everton in January. They signed him permanently the following season, and despite a decent start to the season, his form quickly dropped off, and so did Everton's as a whole. When Ronald Koeman took over as manager following the sacking of Roberto Martinez, Lennon fell way down in the pecking order and only played 14 minutes of football during the first 2 months of the 17/18 season. Subsequently, he joined Burnley in January 2018, and after 2.5 uneventful seasons, he joined Kayserispor in the Turkish league. He then rejoined Burnley a season later and after just 1 season retired aged 35. And that was it for Pochettino's first ever Spurs starting 11. Honourable mentions go to Harry Kane, who's of course at Bayern, Andros Townsend, who's a free agent, and Lewis Holtby, who's now at Bundesliga 2 side Holstein Kiel, as they were the 3 subs who came on in Pochettino's first ever Spurs game. Having seen how far Spurs came under Poch, can Postecoglou go one further and win a trophy? And also, can Pochettino have a similar impact at Chelsea? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, please like, comment and subscribe to the channel.